All right, and we back on the forecast. So in Milwaukee, a mentally ill homeless brother, Dontre Hamilton, was shot 14 times by Milwaukee police. Now let's go back and see what got this mentally ill homeless brother shot 14 times by police.
New radio calls from Officer Manney show the dramatic moments immediately following that shooting.
Steve Shamraz is here in the studio with the audio. Steve.
Mike and Carol, as Tom just said, there were no cameras that captured the shooting of Dontre Hamilton or the moments immediately after. But we can hear the radio calls made by Officer Chris Manney. Those calls made as soon as Manney stopped shooting, and the emotion in those calls is very plain to hear.
1246, shots fired, officer involved. Guy started beating me, grabbed my bat, and was going to hit me in the head with my own bat, and shots fired. Starbucks, help right now. Give me medical too, he's going to need medical. Shot multiple times to the chest. Black male, he's about 20. Starbucks at Kilbourne and Water, I need medical.
Witness testimony describes a scuffle between Manney and Hamilton, with Hamilton striking the officer at least once with his police baton. In the moments after the shooting, though, Manney was confused about whether he was even hit.
1246, I don't even know if I was hit. It was close combat. I need an officer to help me here too. 1246, I may have been hit with a baton, but I'm okay. I'm off the air now. Sergeant's in charge.
Officer Manney was fired in October for his decision to stop and frisk Dontre Hamilton. It broke with department policy. He's appealing that decision, but may seek a duty disability retirement from the force. Sources have said Manney suffers emotional distress as a result of Hamilton's death.
Now this brother, Dontre Hamilton, who was diagnosed with schizophrenia, was minding his own business, just sleeping on the park bench downtown. So a Starbucks employee called the police to complain about him. But the call was classified as a welfare check. So basically, they got a call to make sure that somebody was all right, and they ended up killing him. Now, a desk sergeant decided to call Officer Christopher Manney to go check on the situation. But Officer Manney was busy at the time with another call, so he left him a voicemail. So 2 other cops ended up responding to the call. They got the brother up. He showed him his ID. He said he was okay and just wanted to take a nap. And since he wasn't doing anything wrong, all they could do was just leave. So then the Starbucks employee calls back, and the same 2 officers come back and told the Starbucks employees that they couldn't do anything because he wasn't doing anything wrong, and they left again. So then an hour and a half after the original call, Officer Christopher Manney finally decides to check his voicemail and responds to the call 90 minutes after the fact, not knowing that 2 other cops had already came and left because they realized there was nothing he can do and he wasn't doing anything wrong. Now when Officer Christopher Manney gets there, he sees him laying down, he gets him up and immediately starts frisking him. Then he claimed all of a sudden out of nowhere, Dontre Hamilton started resisting. He said this brother tried to punch him, but he blocked it and hit him on the chin with the open palm. Then he says this mentally ill brother punched him in the face and took his baton and started beating him with his baton. Now the witnesses say that this cop hit him with the baton 1 or more times, and that this brother Dontre Hamilton got the baton and hit him back with it. That's when this cop says he feared for his life and was left with no other choice but to shoot him 14 times. But the autopsy the family released contradicted some of the cop's story.
New information tonight on the controversial officer-involved shooting at Red Arrow Park. Dontre Hamilton's family lawyer is raising new questions about the number of deadly shots fired and where Dontre was hit.
Dontre Hamilton's family has known for months he was shot 14 times by Officer Christopher Manney. The family's lawyer is releasing portions of the autopsy out of the family's frustration with waiting for the district attorney to make a decision on charges.
7 months is an awful long time for them to wait.
Attorney John Safran says the autopsy shows all but one of the 14 bullets entered from the front. 7 traveled in a downward direction.
It seems unusual that all those shots would be in a downward direction. That combined with the fact that there was at least 1 shot and 1 bullet that ended up in Dontre's back.
Initial reports indicate Manney and Hamilton struggled with the officer's baton during a pat-down. Manney claimed Hamilton grabbed it and hit the officer. The family says pictures of Manney don't show any injuries. The Hamilton's lawyer says the autopsy shows Dontre suffered blunt force injuries to his head and face, no drugs or alcohol in his system, and no gun residue on his hand. Safran also believes the shooting was not close range.
It begs the question as to if Christopher Manney was some distance away, why he needed to shoot, and why he needed to shoot 14 times.
Now, Milwaukee Police Chief Ed Flynn fired Officer Manney. The department referred any comment on the autopsy to the medical examiner's office, which had no comment tonight.
Now, Officer Christopher Manney claimed that when he fired, it didn't have any effect on Dontre Hamilton, so he continued firing while walking backwards. He said he perceived a threat until he was completely on the ground, but witnesses say he was still shooting while he was on the ground. He didn't have any injuries. Half of the shots he was aiming down, and one of the shots even hit him in the back. Now, eventually, the police chief, Edward Flynn, fired him because he recognized that this brother was mentally ill, but he ignored policy, he violated his brother's civil rights, and frisked him like he was a criminal.
Right now at 10, the Milwaukee police officer who shot Dontre Hamilton 14 times at Red Arrow Park has been fired. Chief Ed Flynn says Officer Christopher Manney made an error in judgment when he patted down Dontre Hamilton last April.
Hamilton's family is pleased with today's firing, but they still want criminal charges against the officer.
We have team coverage. Charles Benson talked to the Hamilton family.
But we begin with Katie Crowther, who has more on Chief Flynn's comments. Katie?
Carol and Mike, Chief Flynn says by not following proper police training and protocol, Officer Christopher Manney put himself in a position where he had to use deadly force, and now he must be held accountable. It was April 30th in Red Arrow Park, where Officer Christopher Manney came into contact with 31-year-old Dontre Hamilton, who was known to be mentally ill.
When you are approaching a mentally ill person who is not being engaged in violent behavior or criminal behavior, there's a set of trainings and approaches that you are taught. And you don't go hands-on and start frisking somebody only because they appear to be mentally ill.
That's what Chief Flynn says Officer Manney did. A pat-down mistake that led to a violent confrontation and the use of deadly force. We went to Officer Manney's home to try and get comment from him. There are some accusations that Flynn's decision to fire Officer Manney is politically motivated, a claim he denies.
This is my decision alone, based on the facts of this case and our responsibility to hold ourselves accountable. And anybody else who says something else is doing their own brand of politicking.
There's already a Facebook page in support of Officer Manney and rumors that fellow officers will be taking action in protest of the chief's decision.
There's certainly going to be a subset of police opinion that's going to say, hey, wait a minute, we had a copper who was fighting for his life, used deadly force, and you're firing him. Okay? I understand that. My inner cop is not dead.
But Flynn says he has a responsibility to the department and city to make sure there are consequences for any officer's bad decision, especially when the outcome is deadly. Chief Flynn also acknowledged that Officer Manney is obviously going through a very difficult time and he should not be demonized.
Now, of course, this cop was not charged. The DA, John Christopher, said, "It's a tragedy, but based on the evidence, the force of use was justifiable." They called in a force of use expert from outside the department, Emmanuel Keppelson, and he said the decision to fire was in line with his training. Now, even though he was not charged, even though they admitted he violated policies which led to somebody's death, the police association was still mad that he was fired at all. And of course they had to defend this cop, calling him getting fired politically motivated. Because to them, our death is nothing but politics. What we have to understand is that race to them is politics. When they call themselves white, it helps them put aside their tribal differences. Instead of calling themselves French, Dutch, Spanish, Russian, German, English, and fighting amongst themselves, they call themselves white and are able to get on the same page when it comes to us. I know we're divided on even the names we should call ourselves, but they use whiteness as a way to unify and be on code with each other. And we could use black or whatever name we want to come up with to do the same, to put aside our tribalisms. They don't criminalize us because we call ourselves black. They criminalize us because it's a zillion-dollar industry. They criminalized us before we knew anything about black or white. They criminalize us so they can sleep at night. It's not about what we call ourselves. It's about the mentality that we have, no matter what we call ourselves. If you have a nation and an army backing up whatever you say, then they have no other choice but to respect it. But until we can put aside those tribal differences, then none of that is going to happen. And we're going to keep getting casualties. At the end of the day, we are all we got.
Again, tonight's tragic shooting occurred while the chief was attending a volatile fire and police commission meeting.
Both Dontre Hamilton supporters and Milwaukee police officers showed up and shouts erupted.
Charles Benson was there. Sounds like quite a scene, Charles.
Yeah, Chief Flynn under attack from two opposing groups. Police union upset at him for firing Officer Christopher Manney, the officer who shot and killed Dontre Hamilton. Hamilton's supporters upset that the officer hasn't been arrested or charged. And all of this erupted inside here as the chief learned about the 5-year-old being shot.
Christopher Manney does not belong on the force.
One by one, supporters of Dontre Hamilton's family
Why is Christopher Manney not locked up?
blasted Chief Flynn and fired Officer Christopher Manney.
The city of Milwaukee has no confidence in the Milwaukee Police Department.
But when officers wearing "We Stand Together" shirts tried to speak, they were heckled and interrupted.
I am also here to show support for Chris Manney.
It went on for minutes with the Fire and Police Commission trying to bring control to the chaos. At one point, the crowd started yelling at Chief Flynn for looking at his cell phone until he explained why. He was dealing with a 5-year-old who had been shot.
I'm sorry if I'm trying to defend him. I'm keeping up in the developments of the shooting of a 5-year-old. All right?
It interrupted again when the police union president went after Chief Flynn for firing Officer Manney.
The loss of Mr. Hamilton. We have compassion for the family. I have prayed for peace for the Hamilton family.
Hamilton's family left without talking.
I'm the lawyer taking all the questions tonight, our attorney.
Chief Flynn praised his officers in the audience for being professional, but he had no patience for those who yelled at him for being on his phone.
The fact is that the people out here, some of them, who had the most to say are absolutely MIA when it comes to the true threats facing this community, and it gets a little tiresome. And when you start getting yelled at for reading the updates of the kid that gets shot, yeah, you take it personal, okay? Now, no offense, but I'm going up there now.
So a lot of emotion, very tense situation here tonight, and outside of the shouting, nothing else was accomplished. And the chief, and the police union, and the Hamilton supporters still remain at odds.
No confidence vote against Milwaukee Police Chief Ed Flynn was nearly unanimous.
The police union says 99.3% of those who voted cast a no confidence vote. They're upset over the chief's firing of the officer who shot and killed Dontre Hamilton 6 months ago.
Michelle Fiore is live with more on this story. Michelle.
Carol, Mike, Chief Flynn's calling the vote political. He says this is a time when the city needs to be healing over Red Arrow Park, and this isn't helping. Now, meantime, the union has even more to say. The president of the Milwaukee Police Association says the verdict is in.
We do not have confidence.
The police officers union has 1,600 members. Mike Crivello would not tell us how many voted yesterday, but claims 99.3% of the officers who did vote don't have confidence in the chief.
If the chief cannot do the right things, if the chief cannot stand before the membership and lead them properly and give them the confidence that they need and deserve to go out there so that they can protect the community, then maybe it's time that he packs his bags.
The MPA delivered sealed envelopes with the no confidence vote to the Common Council and the mayor's office this morning, where they were greeted by the mayor's chief of staff.
As you know, the mayor has full confidence in the chief. I assume that it's going to be a difference between us.
The mayor released this written statement today, saying the MPA leadership is trying to stoke a political fire. I have complete confidence in Chief Flynn and the hardworking rank and file.
A number of officers in this police department who are expressing support for one of their colleagues in a difficult moment. I understand that and I respect it. And we have a political leadership of the MPA that's making a political statement.
So the no confidence vote has no direct effect on Chief Flynn's employment. The union, though, is hoping that this, though, makes their unhappiness known.
A jury awards $500,000 to a man stopped and strip searched by Milwaukee police. This is the first of dozens of strip search lawsuits against Milwaukee police.
And if the rest of them go this way, it could cost the city millions of dollars. Steve Shamraz is live with this breaking news tonight. Steve.
Carol, Mike, it could be a lot of money, but this is about something much bigger here than money. The jury ruled police had no legal reason to stop and frisk a man on the streets of Milwaukee, though this jury says they had no issue with the alleged strip search that followed. To the man at the center of this first illegal stop and search case, the verdict is not about the $500,000. It is about the message.
That just because you look a different way or you drive a certain kind of car, that don't mean that you're doing illicit things.
A federal jury found officers from Milwaukee Police District 5 had no legal reason to stop Hardy in March of 2012. The alleged strip search that happened after that stop, the jury said, was not illegal. But Hardy's lawyer says this was still a big victory.
This is about the Milwaukee police terrorizing men of color in this community by stopping them and doing whatever the hell they please with them.
Milwaukee police responded to the split verdict in a statement saying, today the jury found in favor of the officers in this case by determining the searches were lawful. I understand the city attorney's office may review the jury's finding relative to an unlawful stop and may consider appealing. More than 60 similar cases are still pending, and with a $500,000 verdict in the first one, Mayor Barrett tonight did not want to think about the eventual cost to the city.
I think it's way too soon to even speculate on that. We obviously don't want to see the taxpayers liable for a huge amount. At the same time, we want to make sure that the law is followed.
The next trial here is set to begin September 8th. Attorney Robincello thinks the chances of an illegal strip search verdict in that case are stronger.
The chapter 6, is called The Night in Question. And you write in the book, now picture this and keep in mind that this is
purely
hypothetical. Yes. Why don't you tell me what might have happened on the night of June 12th, 1994? And let's just walk through the night.
Well, first of all, this is very difficult for me to do this. It was very difficult for me because it's hypothetical. I know and I accept the fact that people are going to feel whatever way they're going to feel. You know, they're going to, you know, whatever they want to feel. In the book, the hypothetical is
Charlie pulls out.
Charlie came by and mentioned something about what was going on at her house. This guy Charlie shows up, the guy who I had recently become friends with, and I don't know why he had been by Nicole's house, but it told me you wouldn't believe what's going on over there. And I remember thinking, well, whatever's going on over there has got to stop.
She is Laura Hart McKinney, the writer who recorded conversations with Mark Fuhrman.
Anything out of a nigger's mouth for the first 5 or 6 sentences is a lie.
And she has remained mostly silent until now.
Why have you decided to come forward now and talk to us?
I trust you.
Does it feel good to talk about this?
Yes. It's time.
All right, Ms. McKinney, would you come forward, please?
There were bits of the puzzle that just I was unable to reveal at the time. And I was unable to be as truthful as I really wanted to be.
So she is telling her story, her truth, and for the first time, excerpts from the Fuhrman tapes you've never heard. Vulgar.
In Weinstein, she had a little fight for Jew, called her the wandering Jew. The plow wife, she had a big nose.
Sexist.
How do you arrest a violent suspect? I yell out, have a man do it.
Disturbing.
You've got to be a borderline sociopath. You've got to be violent.
Do you use the word nigger in describing people?
Presently?
Yes.
Overruled.
No, sir.
Have you used that word in the past 10 years?
Not that I recall, no.
You mean if you called someone a nigger, you have forgotten it?
not sure I can answer that question the way you phrased it, sir.
You have difficulty understanding the question. I'll rephrase it. I want you to assume that perhaps at some time, since 1985 or 6, you addressed a member of the African American race as a nigger. Is it possible that you have forgotten that act on your part?
No, it's not possible.
Are you therefore saying that you have not used that word in the past 10 years, Detective Fuhrman?
Yes, that's what I'm saying.
And you say on your oath that you have not addressed any black person as a nigger or spoken about black people as niggers in the past 10 years, Detective Fuhrman?
That's what I'm saying, sir.
So that anyone who comes to this court and quotes you as using that word in dealing with African Americans would be a liar, would they not, Detective Fuhrman?
Yes, they would.
All of them, correct?
All of them.